Welcome back to Adobe Illustrator CC. In this tutorial we're going to cover the Live Paint Bucket tool and the Live Paint Selection tool. So that has the hotkey of Shift L for the selection tool, and for the paint bucket the hotkey of K. These tools are hidden underneath the Shape Builder tool. So if you find the Shape Builder tool over here on the side, what you can do is hold the mouse down on that tool and go over to the tear out bar and click on it, and then you have it released. So I have them available here. The live paint basically allows you to essentially use like a paint bucket sort of quality to paint areas in here. So if I basically, in order to paint, I have to select an area to paint first. So if I click in here, nothing will happen. It'll tell me you need to select this area in order to make it a live paint group. So I'll click OK. And basically what I need to do is select with the black arrow and drag a marquee selection over everything. Then I can choose the live paint group. Now what's going to happen is, as I click, it'll give me this other warning that complex visual attributes such as brushes, live effects, transparency, and stroke alignment options may be lost when converting live paint group. So when I click OK, what happens is my charcoal outline stroke on the head of this wacky little quick character I created here has disappeared. So it doesn't contribute to that. You have to understand that. But you'll notice as I go across these shapes, I get this live paint bucket that appears. Now I'm getting also a stroke that appears. By default, that doesn't happen. If I double click on the tool, I checked this paint strokes option when I was working on last. So if I click OK, you'll see this is the way you normally see it, which is just a fill. You don't see any strokes. You just see the paint bucket as you go across. But if you double click and check this little box, paint strokes, you will not only see the fill, but you'll see a little brush symbol for the stroke. Now I don't know why this doesn't happen by automatic options. In Illustrator, Adobe has just decided to keep it unchecked, which is strange to me. So to choose a color, you just have to click up here in the fill option and pick whatever color row you want to start with. And now when I click down here, what will happen is you'll see three little color swatches, and if I use the arrow keys, I can basically rotate through all those swatches, and that's essentially what's happening here. So if I want to change this color, I just click on it. Any of these I can click on. Now you'll notice it'll actually work kind of like the shape builder tool in the sense that it'll divide up shapes that overlap. So I can select these two ends and change them a different color. And basically I can go through and choose whatever colors I want to my heart's content. Once I get to the fill properties the way I want, then I can go to the stroke, which is the outside edge, and I can change it to black. And typically what happens is it's default to the 1 point. I could set it to a higher point and then come down and click, but what will happen is it won't remember that. I mean, it'll remember it right now as I click, but if I go back into these guys and change, you know, the color of the fill, say to this color, and I come back to the stroke, for whatever reason, usually it doesn't maintain that save option. Sometimes it does though, so it's a little buggy. Like right now it is saving it, which is strange. It usually doesn't. So just realize that can happen either way. Now when I select this group as with a black selection arrow tool, you'll notice what happens is it's kind of like a group. And if we look in the layers palette here and twirl it open, it'll actually say live paint group, and that's what it is. So in order to access the individual colors, if I want, I can use what's called a live paint selection tool. And I can essentially hover over and click on these areas. And basically then I can double click in here in the color picker, pick whatever color I want, and update that way. So very easy to do. I can double click again, pick whatever color I want, and click. And I can even go to the actual stroke property and do the same thing. Maybe on this one I want it to be 2 point, and I want it to be, you know, blue, for example. As I click out, you'll see it updates. So the selection tool of live paint selection tool, some people prefer this. It's a new feature. It's a little bit I don't know, more intuitive. It's kind of like clicking on the black arrow and selecting the actual individual shape and changing the color. Now what's the difference between that and basically working with regular shapes? There really isn't anything different. The only thing that's different is this is a group, so you can kind of treat it as a group and essentially color out different areas. It does allow you to color out these areas that are unique because they're created essentially like a shape builder tool or Pathfinder, where you have extra shapes in between shapes based upon the overlap. So that's also another attribute that's very interesting. But I mean, that's pretty much it. The only thing you can't do is when you come back, you can't select it and change, say, to the charcoal for the stroke. You'll notice as I click OK here, I accidentally double clicked on it. Nothing has updated on here. Now if I double click and go into the individual shape here, and isolate it, and click on it, you'll notice nothing also happens. And that's the only problem with the way Live Paint Group works. These kind of attributes don't work at all. You would have to basically reverse the Live Paint Group effects and then apply whatever stroke you want afterwards. The only way to do this would be to essentially select your Live Paint Group and click on the expand option. Once you do that, basically it creates individual paths, and at that point you could double click and isolate each shape and then go in and select your interesting attributes of, like, for example, the charcoal stroke here, and then double click out. The other thing you should know about the Live Paint Group, say I have I don't know, a weird kind of shape here like this, that if I give it a fill here, typically it doesn't quite fill in all the way. Let me select it and choose a fill, something like that. When I convert this to Live Paint, if I click on it, I'll click OK. Sometimes it'll work, but sometimes it won't, based upon if there's an opening there, like if the gap's too short, too shallow. So under Object, you can go down to Live Paint and choose the gap options here. And in here you can see that it paint stops at small gaps. If it was set to large gaps or custom gaps, basically it would change accordingly. The other thing you should know is under Object, Live Paint, you have the option to release Live Paint, and you have the option to expand, which basically brings it back as an actual path. So that's pretty much the Live Paint bucket and the Live Paint selection tool in Adobe Illustrator CC. See you soon. Cheers.